Welcome to Midlife Catalyst, a place where ordinary people share extraordinary stories. I'm Amanda Yonts, and today's guest certainly has a story to share with you. Jackson Rainbow, survivor, servant, speaker of purpose. Jackson Rainbow's story is one of uncommon resilience, unwavering faith, and a calling that emerged from the depths of adversity. Adopted into a loving, caring family, Jackson learned early what it meant to fight, not just for survival, but for meaning. From a young age, Jackson was marked by joy, humor, and the rare ability to uplift those around him, even while navigating physical challenges. At just 9 years old, he began sending care packages to deployed Marines in Afghanistan. His compassion and leadership earned him national recognition through the Soldiers Angels Project, where he received the prestigious Crystal Wings Award and over 15 military challenge coins, including one presented by a colonel in the United States Army. But Jackson's greatest battles were still ahead. At age 12, he was diagnosed with stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma, a diagnosis that could have defined his end. Instead, it became the catalyst for his purpose. Supported by his family, church, and doctors, Jackson endured intense treatments while spreading hope to those around him. His courage caught the attention of his oncologist, who introduced him to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Not only did Jackson receive his wish, but he was invited to serve as the Texas Regional Ambassador, speaking at events and inspiring countless others. A year later, after speaking at the NCAA conference, Jackson was told his cancer had returned. He did not fall into despair. He stood firm in his faith, believing that God had given him a purpose worth fighting for. During a second round of treatment, he and his family stayed at the Dallas Ronald McDonald house. Even while battling for his life, Jackson gave back. In 2017, Jackson faced yet another mysterious and life-threatening health emergency. This time, it wasn't cancer, but something so severe he lost the ability to eat, drink, or walk. Months passed as doctors searched for answers. Still, Jackson believed in a miracle. One day, a surgeon walked into his hospital room and asked if he could hold on for just one more week. And if so, he would try to save him. That surgeon did. Jackson survived again because it wasn't time to go home. It was time to step fully into his purpose. Today, Jackson is as healthy as he's ever been and more focused than ever on his mission. Married to his beautiful wife, Blakely, Jackson has entered a new chapter rooted in faith, unity, and shared mission. They are committed to helping as many people as possible by spreading a message of hope, healing, and God-given purpose, whether he's on stage or in hospitals or in conversation with those at the edge of giving up. Jackson's message is clear. Your story isn't over, and your pain is not the end of the page, but the beginning of something far greater. When Jackson speaks, people don't just hear a story, they experience a journey of courage, conviction, and undeniable grace. And he is here to share that story with us today. Jackson, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so glad that you're here to share your story with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. You have had quite the journey, as we alluded to in your intro, but there are so many pieces within that. It's like you've lived 4 lives in a very short time and have had to
Yes, ma'am.
endure a lot. Start from the beginning and share with us how you're sitting here today, because it's quite the story of perseverance and it's impressive.
Yes, ma'am. So I was raised in Sherman, Texas. We're a little bit north of Dallas. Was just a young kid. I was playing football in living the dream as a young 10-year-old. Yeah, it was football and school and hanging out with friends. That was the life for us. So we did that for years. And then in 2012, the year of 2012, I started to notice some things that were changing in my health. And I have always struggled with allergies my entire life. I'm allergic to everything in Texas. So I've lived with it. I've learned how to be used to it. That summer of 2012, I was I was going into a different league of football. I was going down south instead of playing up here in Grayson County. And it's a very high level of athletes, and they're from all over the state of Texas. So I had to better prepare myself. And that summer, I went to 3 different football camps. And about halfway through in the summer, I realized that my breathing had changed a bit. I went to multiple football camps that season to better prepare myself for the league that I was going into. And about halfway through the summer, I started noticing my breathing was a little bit off, and I didn't really pay any attention to it. I just thought my allergies were just really, maybe it was a rough year that year. And little did I know that it was leading on to something else that we just hadn't figured out yet. And so fast forward to probably maybe October of 2012, I was playing football. I had injured my back. And so we had been doing physical therapy, everything under the sun to try to figure out what was going on with my back. And the last thing that we could figure out with nothing really going on, changing my back and everything, my physical therapist requested that we do an MRI of my abdomen and my back area just to see what was going on. And so we did that, and my parents got the results. And as good parents, they wanted to do the background work on it without having me worry about anything. I was then registered from football just because the hits and the contact of it was really, really wearing on my body. So they redshirted me for that season. Then come on December 14th of 2010, I woke up and my parents said, "Hey, we're going to go to Children's Hospital because you haven't been feeling that well." And I hadn't been. I had started experiencing some issues, my breathing. There was some telltale signs that were showing up. And I was a young kid. I wanted to play football. I wanted to enjoy Christmas time. I was just living a normal life. And so we went down to Children's Medical Center in Dallas, and we were there for probably about 6 to 7 hours. One of our friends that's a doctor up here, well-respected doctor, he said the best way to get into that place is go to the emergency room. So we actually went straight to the emergency room, hung out for about 6 or 7 hours. And my father, he was raised by a World War II veteran, and they adopted me when he was 45 years old. So I got raised by the greatest generation's children. So I learned how to handle myself in different situations that are very young and be mature in those situations. My father has always been a strong man in my life, and I never really saw him cry, but he stepped out of the hospital room that night for a brief second because the doctor asked him to, and basically he came back in, and I could see in his eyes that he was doing everything he could to hold it back. So I knew right then and there that something was off. And at that time, I was 12. I didn't think of anything. I was like, oh, I probably have something a little bit minor that just makes my dad sad. And then the doctor came in and kind of sat in front of me, and I had my dad to my left and my mom to my right. And he basically told us that I had stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma that night. So at that point, my world at 12 years old, you can relate to this. 12 years old, you don't really even understand what the word cancer is.
Yeah.
And you hear about it in the news, and you hear about all the different studies and people being affected by it. But at 12, you're more concerned about when you're going to see your friends again.
Exactly.
And so my little world got shook really, really hard. And so I had to really kind of rely on my dad's teachings of how to kind of separate, okay, your childhood is pretty much done. It's time to become an adult at a really young age, or try to mature to an adult stature, because that's what I was going to be around for the next 6 to 8 months, going through chemo treatment and radiation, and being able to just kind of understand what was going on. Obviously, my parents and, we've been in the same church that I was born into. And so we have a lot of medical professionals, and they were always kind. If I had questions or anything, I could call them or text them and say, okay, what does this word mean? Like, what does this situation entail? And it was great, the whole process. And I say that because in every situation at a young age, I've always learned to just find the positivity in something. I was 12. And I can say this, and it's a truly, truly huge blessing that a lot of people in this world sometimes don't have. But my church family was there almost every single day. And then, my family was there every single day. And that's a big part of it. Fighting cancer
That's
is having a good support group. If you have somebody there with you just to hang out, I mean, you don't have to talk. I mean, it'd be a all day conversation. Just somebody there in the room with you to know that you can tell yourself, okay, I'm not alone in this. Yes, I'm the one going through it, but I have someone with me. I have somebody that, can help me through something. And so that was really it. I was 12 years old. I was infatuated with Legos. So every other day, somebody would bring a new Lego. And my little self competition was like, let's see if I can get this one done before another one walks in the door. It was great. It was a hard road. I learned a lot. I had to grow up and being 12 years old. That was the big part of it for me. Is like I knew my life was going to be changed forever. And I wouldn't. I heard a quote one time that says, when you walk into the storm, you don't come out the same person. And that really stuck to me. I heard it now here the last couple of weeks, but when I think back about all my stories,
Mhm.
it was true for me. I walked into it as a sweet, innocent little kid, and I walked out as a sweet person, but saw the world differently at a young age of 12. I didn't see it like I used to. And so God brought us through it, and we relied on that. My faith grew tremendously. Our pastor, I had questions because I thought I was doing everything okay. I didn't think I was in trouble. And we called him Papa Charles because he's very near and dear to all of us. And I asked him, I said, so what do you think about me going through cancer? And he says, are you wondering why you're going through cancer? And I said, yeah, kind of. And he just started talking to me about the story of Job. And, Job was a man of God and he did all these great things and he loved God and his heart was for him. And so, the devil wanted to test Job's faith. And so that story, that 15-minute conversation with Papa Charles was all I needed. And I ran to the races with it. I knew I wasn't in trouble. I knew God wasn't mad at me at the young age. And I was just like, okay, let's do this thing. So I strapped up my boots and I stayed positive and we beat it. And through that fight, so many things came out of that. And that's what I go back to talking about having positivity in your life is we literally started a foundation out of that. And we started Miracle in Progress actually started from a sign on a door at the hospital. And it said only faith beyond this point underneath Miracle in Progress. And that is where it really started, and we started doing all kinds of fundraisers and everything after I got, was put into remission. And I started speaking for Make-A-Wish, and Make-A-Wish is a great, great organization. I had wanted to meet Peyton Manning for years, and they were able to make it happen.
Oh, that's awesome.
And, it was, and the crazy thing about it, and I'll stand on this, is that Lord works in mysterious ways. Well, I was diagnosed on December 14th, 2010, and I flew to Indianapolis 2011 on December 14th. So it was the exact 1 year anniversary date that I was going to meet my favorite person in the world when it came to football. It was great. So you kind of fast track it a little bit. I was getting back into football. I was cleared to play football. I was volunteering at the VA. I come from a military background family, so my heart was always with the veterans and always with active duty people. And so I just went to the races. I got connected with Soldiers Angels, which is an organization out of San Antonio, Texas. And I just went crazy over it. We were doing stuff for the active duty people and the veterans here and all over in the US. And we just did it. And that's when I knew my heart was in the right place because I was doing something I loved and seeing if I could every single day, I'd hang out with veterans or active duty personnel. I really would. I mean, they're just some of the best people in this world. And, they've been through really tough things. And when I was at the VA at the young age, I just felt like I was at home. Felt like I
Mhm.
was with all my uncles hanging out and, just listening to their words of wisdom. And I still love it to this day. And so I was doing all of that and I became an ambassador for Make-A-Wish in between that time. And so, it's public speaking. I was really doing a lot of good things as a young kid. And I look back now and I'm just like, you accomplished a lot. And it doesn't seem real, but it happened. And my largest speaking engagement was the NCAA Division II meeting. It was a conference. I was 13 years old. They had asked me to come speak, and I had spoken in front of probably 2, 3, 400 people at the time. And they were like, "Well, you're going to speak in front of about 1,500 people." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I got with my speech coach, and I was like, "Okay, I'm speaking in front of 1,500 people. What do I have to expect?" And she's like, look, if you can hear laughing, if you can hear crying, if you can hear the emotions, you've got them. It's okay. You just do your thing like you know you how to do it. And that's what I did. And the funny thing is the farther I got, the closer I got to the date of speaking there, the number kept getting bigger. Went from 1,500 to 2,200 to 800. And then when I got off the stage after I get done speaking, it was 3,800 people.
Wow.
So, that was a huge, huge deal for me that I was able to speak in front of that many people. It's amazing what God will do for you in your life when you're trying to help other people.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
the willingness, because
Mhm.
the thing people don't talk about is when you are that vulnerable and sharing your story, it does take a toll on you. It can
Mhm.
be exhausting. So, what kept you going?
My biggest thing for me was, I guess, for my sake, I fought for myself and I fought for my family and my friends. And I knew anything that came against me, I was just being tested and I was being tested. God wanted to see what I could do for his kingdom. And I just kept pushing forward. And I knew if I could beat cancer once, I could handle whatever came next. And that's what's crazy is I heard TikTok is a good thing and can be a bad thing at the same time. But I hear some of the best motivational quotes on TikTok. And Mike Tyson said on our videos, when you're favored by God, you're favored by the devil. And it just shook me because it's something so simple. It's a simple quote. It's nothing detailed. It's just straight to the point. And it kind of goes back to, I was speaking at this NCAA conference and I talked about God and what he did for us. And it was less than 24 hours the next day that I was being told I was going to have to fight cancer again. And that to me, I get more revelations. I get more aha moments now that I'm older than I did when I was younger. And I just think about it as like I was doing what I needed to be doing. I was in the purpose of God, and the devil didn't like it and he wanted to change it. So he said, let's try cancer again. And I have to say that the second go around was a lot more challenging. Instead of going every other day for chemo treatment, I would have to be in a hospital for a week. And I would start chemo an hour after I got to the hospital, all the way continuously to an hour before I left the hospital. So it was 7 day stint, continuous chemo treatment. If you look at it between the first time and the second time, the chemo, I could feel it, but not as bad. But when I came out of the hospital going through the second time, you could feel it because you're in the bed, you're sitting there, you're not as active, because before I had a day in between to rest and kind of move around and do some different things. And this time I was in it for the long haul. And so it was a little bit more totaling on my body. Like my muscle wasn't there as much. And I had been training for football like crazy, and I was going through some vigorous training. I had met a gentleman named Ronnie Braxton. I call him Uncle Ronnie, and his workout name is Real Truth, and I love him to death. And we were training 5 times a week, 3, 4 times a day. And so I was in great shape when I had to go through cancer again. It was a little bit more different. I had to make the adjustments for myself. I'd go in for a week, I'd have 2 weeks off. So usually by the second week off, I was feeling good enough to go hang out, play, and do certain things with restrictions, obviously, because my immune system was just pain. And so we moved forward. We did 3 of those, and then the last one was the one that I worried the most about because at the time I had a German Shepherd puppy and I loved him to death. He was my support. If I didn't feel good, he didn't feel good. If I was sitting on the couch, he was either at my feet or next to me on the couch. The last long haul of the cancer treatment was I'd have to go through stem cell transplant. And luckily, I was able to use my own stem cells. So that was really good in the spectrum of fighting this cancer. And so we went in, we did the hardest chemo they had in the books, and then we did the stem cell transplant, and I think we were there for 34 days. And for me, that was the biggest problem because I was just like, this is way too long. Like I can
Right.
handle a week.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for it is like they couldn't give me a plan of when I was going to get out because this chemo, this type of chemo they were giving me completely wiped out everything. And so we were in a specialized room at Children's Hospital in Dallas that had ventilated air and had all these precautionary things because, I mean, a simple cold could have killed me. And so I was on a very strict, very minimal visitor. So it was a hard one. It was very tough. So we were there for 34 days. And then I was like, yes, I get to go home. I get to see my dog. And well, that didn't really work out too much. The problem was is we lived in Sherman and Children's Hospital was too far away for me to be able to get back in time if something happened. So they said, well, we want to put you at the Ronald McDonald house. And I was like, young me, I'm rolling my eyes every 30 seconds and copping an attitude because I'm not getting my way, and so I just had to pray about it and move through it. And so we ended up staying at Ronald McDonald House for about a month, and it was great. I love Ronald McDonald House and what they do for families. And we were in our own isolation kind of area because of my immune system and everything. And so it was like in a little apartment. So I had my dad on the weekends and I had my mom during the week, and we cooked and we watched movies. And I mean, I still was able to have some visitors, not as much, but I was able to have some visitors. It was great. It was really, really a good experience for us. It was kind of like living in the college dorms. My dad always told me, he's like, man, it's like we're going to school. And I said, I guess I've never been to college yet, but yeah, this is kind of like it. So we had a good time. My dad, he's in dental implant sales, and so he does a lot of presentations. And so back in the day, he had an old projector, and it was a nice projector, and he had a big screen for it. So instead of watching TV at Ronald McDonald House on the nice TV that they had for us, he wanted it to be like the real movies. So he'd bring that big canopy screen and we'd put it up and we'd set the projector up, and it sounded like a IMAX theater in there. I mean, I don't know how we didn't get in trouble for the sound because he'd hook his speakers up to it. I mean, it looked like a theater in there. And we just had fun, and that's the key point of fighting something like this. And I know it may sound kind of weird and odd to some of the listeners that you got to have fun when you fight cancer, but that's what it boils down to. It is positivity is key. And I know that's the most thrown around slogan in the world, but I mean, give it a shot. And anything that you're going through really helps. Your attitude's better, you laugh, and you grow in yourself. You grow and you know that you can handle certain things just by having a good time and trying to find little inklings of positivity throughout the darkness. And so we came through it. We came through that whole fight. I learned a lot about myself, and there was some things that I needed to work through. In my little brain, I didn't think anything of it. I just kept living my life, and I kept speaking, and I kept doing stuff for the veterans and everything. And I did end up hanging up the cleats from football. I decided that, my body had been beat up for years and it was time to hang up the cleats. And, the great thing about it was my last football team was the best football team I ever played on. We won all over the state. The guys I played with are still some of my closest friends to today. And they're all over the country now. I've got some that are in the NFL. I've got some that are coaching football now at big time Texas high school football. That's like a ritual here in Texas.
It is.
We love it. And I grew and I made some of the best friends I ever had. And I just continued life. I went back to school and public spoke and did some things. We carried on with life and we did some really good things. And so we kept moving forward, and 2017 rolled around. The end of 2016, early 2017 started kicking around. The fight that I'm getting ready to go into was the one that changed, that really left a mark on me. I had operation done early December of 2016 that went fine. Everything went fine. And I had a little bit of recovery time. So January 1st of 2017 came around, and we were sitting there. I woke up. We were going to have some friends over from the church to celebrate the New Year's like we have always done in the past. And I woke up and I knew something was off, but I was like, me and my hard head itself, I'm not going to worry about things. And so I was just like, oh, I'm good. I'm good. And so probably about 10 o'clock that day, I went to my knees in pain, and it was right in my stomach area, and it was like serious pain. So I called my surgeon and I said, I don't know what's going on here, but something's going on. And so he was just like, he said, try this and let's see what happens. Well, it worked for about 4 hours. And then once it wore off, my father knows if I have to go to the hospital and I tell him it's time to go to the hospital, he knows something's up because I love the medical field and I love the doctors that save lives, but I personally don't want to go anywhere near a hospital because when I go to a hospital, I stay. I don't just go in for a checkup. They find something, they're like, okay, let's hang out for a little while. And I'm not for it. I just not for it at all. So little did I know that whole saying that I just said was I was about to eat it because I was in and out of the hospitals for 8 months trying to figure out what was going on with me. And all the surgeries I did, all the different medicines we tried, everything, it just wasn't working. And the surgeon who had performed the surgery on me in December prior to that year, he's been in my church. He's known me since I was born, and he's a very well-respected surgeon. I mean, the accomplishments that man has had is amazing. And when I see him scratching his head and not able to figure out what's going on with me, that for me really, really that took a toll on me because I was 19 at the time. And so I'm an adult now and I can understand, I can handle myself. And he never lost faith, which is what kept me alive and what kept me going. It's like, okay, if Aaron knows there's something, we can fix it somehow. We just don't know what it is now. It's worth fighting. It's worth fighting. And so we went to 4 different hospitals, probably maxed out about 18 surgeries, and no one could tell us anything. And, mind you, I went from January 1st, 2017 to, let's put it at April, of not being able to eat anything. Couldn't even drink water, couldn't hold anything down. And so when you're not eating anything and it's going on for months, you shed weight like crazy. So a little bit different than cancer, I could literally start to see my face and my body deteriorate in front of me. And it's like every other time I went to the restroom at the hospital, I looked in the mirror and my eyes were sinking in more. So it took a really serious toll, and my body was showing me, okay, this is a different fight. This is not cancer. You don't have, and that's kind of how I explain it the best way I can is cancer, you have a battle plan. They give you a treatment plan. They tell you this is okay. You'll lose your hair. You may not want to eat. You may really want to eat. You have the book. This, I didn't have a battle plan. I didn't have a game plan. We're just going to try this tomorrow. So for me, I was just like, it was just a blow and a shock. And mentally, I was toast.
Right.
That's the best way I could say it. I mean, I could see, and I've always been a kind of a bigger guy, and because I played middle linebacker, so you had to have a little bit of beef on your body to take hits. I was able to see the veins in my hands, my feet, my calf muscles were just like spaghetti noodles. And I was starting to get a little negative about it.
That's understandable.
Because I was just like, I've got one of the best surgeons in my book in the nation that's scratching his head and can't give me answers. And it's not because he doesn't want to give me the wrong answers or the right answers, it's because he truly does not know. We could not figure anything out. Blood work, everything, every test. And so we brought oncologists in. We brought every kind of specialist in the world to see what was going on, and nobody could figure it out. So basically, they sent me home. I really didn't know what to expect, and I had a nurse. His last name was Summerall. He was in the military. He was an Army combat veteran, and me and him clicked. And he would sit with me for a few minutes at a time. We just talked, and we would just kind of get on a level of being able to have common conversation about certain things. And he looked at me with, the last time I ever saw him at the hospital, I just saw something in his eyes. It was a sobering look, like almost like he didn't know if I was going to make it or not. And he had never said that. And he was always positive, and he was always uplifting. He took better care of my whole family at the hospital than anybody's ever done. Like, he would thoroughly check on my mother and my father. Like, he was concerned about them too. And that's the kind of man he was. And when I looked at him last time, he just had that look in his eye. And I was like, okay, all right. So we went to, I was home for 3 days, and I went to UT Southwestern in Dallas, UT Southwestern Clemens in Dallas. And that was what I called my final stay, because it was. and I had every tube in the world going in and out of my body. I had everything hooked up. I was being fed through a tube, and then they had to take the feeding tube out because it caused me to go into a diabetic shock, and all this stuff was going down. And I mean, my heart rate was slowing down every single day. And I had hit my breaking point. I had finally found my breaking point. As I tell people this is probably the wildest or craziest prayer I have ever prayed, but I did it. And that night, I wrote 7 letters, 2 to my best friends, and the rest were to my family. And I asked God, I said, I have conversations with God like I do, like we are right now. That's how I pray. That's how I feel comfortable. That's how I feel like I can get everything off my chest. And I asked him, I said, I'm done fighting and I'm tired. I'm literally watching my body die. And I said, Lord, if this is the way that you're going to bring me home to heaven, just take me home tonight. And if it's not, I need something. I need a sign. Just show me something that I'm going to make it, to give me a little bit more motivation to fight. And after I got done praying that, I realized that I had actually given up on myself. And it was mind blowing to me. It's like, I really did it. I really found breaking point in this. And so I went to sleep that night fully ready to accept whatever was going to come out of it. And I woke up the next day and I was just like, okay, let's see what happens. And about 9:30, this tall, skinny doctor, cowboy doctor, Southern doctor, comes in and looks at me and he says, can you hold out one more week? And I looked at him and in my brain, I was like, apparently you hadn't read my whole file. I've been doing this for months now. If you're asking me to hold out a week, yeah, I can hold out a week. And he says, so UT Southwestern was a teaching hospital and he was a professor. And he asked me to hold a week because he had to go to Houston to teach. And he said, if you can hold a week, I will come back and fix you. And I just said in my brain, I was like, okay, God, you're going to test me one more time. You're going to see what I can do in a week. And I did. I held out the week. And let me tell you, it was the hardest week of my life. It was bad. I barely slept that week. I had all these monitors and everything. And, anybody that has stayed in the hospital, you know what it's like. It's the most uncomfortable thing in the world because you've got leads hooked up to you. I had breathing tubes. I had 4 or 5 different IVs because they couldn't get a vein. So I was in the trenches with this. It was a hard week, and prayer and faith got me through it. And he showed up and he says, let's take you back and let's see what we can do for you. And he told me, he says, I'm just going to have to open you up and I'm going to have to look around because he couldn't give me a strong diagnosis. He couldn't figure it out either, but he says, I'm going to open you up and I'm just going to look around. And if I can find out what the issue is, I'm going to fix it. And I said, okay, doc, I'll hold you to it. So 3.5 hours later, and the big thing was they didn't know if I was going to wake up or not because I was in such a weak point. The crazy thing about it was I was so focused in that I was going to be fixed. The death part didn't even swing me. And I was just like, this guy's going to fix me. I get to have my life back. Like, death's out of the picture. About 3.5 hours later, I woke up and he came in the room and he said, you did great. We fixed you. You'll be here for a couple more weeks and you're good to go. And that was it. I stayed for about a couple more weeks and this journey was a lot more different. I had to relearn kind of how to walk, how to eat. My speech was starting to leave me. And I think that's what really told out on me when it came to seeing side effects because I've always been able to speak. I've always been able to talk and laugh, but I could not. It was hard work to get stuff out of my mouth. And so that's what really played it. And so I was back up and running and, I regained everything. I went back to work and I was really super skinny. So I had to I had lost a lot of muscle tone. So I used to be able to, leg press this amount of weight or lift this amount of weight. And I went to like 5-pound dumbbells. It was a growing moment for myself because I had to relearn my whole body. It was a complete reset. It was challenging, but the one thing that I did not do for myself and really kind of be serious about was my mental state. My mental state was jacked 7 ways from Sunday. I mean, I had so many demons in my head running around constantly that I didn't know what to do with them. And so, being a young kid that thought he could handle the world because he just came over that thing, I said, yeah, I'm gonna have some fun with my life. And I play around with partying and going out and trying to live that young teenager life and I did. And, not all of it was bad. I met a lot of good people and it was great. But the one thing that changed was I went from drinking with friends on the weekends to drinking by myself and trying to suppress the demons and the thoughts. And I couldn't even sleep. That's
Yeah.
still something I deal with today. And I bring it up
Yeah.
because I wasn't sleeping. I was sleeping like 2, 3 hours at a time. And I was drinking to go to sleep.
Right.
And I was drinking to drown out all the negativity that was floating around in my head. And, that's how it started. Started out hanging out with friends on the weekends, started out having a good time, and then it led to drinking a little bit by myself and still going out with friends and thinking, oh, I don't have an issue. I'm good. Like, I don't need any help. Like, I'm strong in myself. I don't need anybody. And I was starting to pull away from the church. And I think everybody that's been in the church and knows if they've strayed away for a little bit, they know what it's like. It's not an easy road. You may think it is, but it's not. And then I ended up just drinking by myself. And I was drinking to go to sleep. I was drinking to just get away from everything. And I was destroying everything around me. I was burning everything around me. It was one of those things that I still laugh at myself about it because it's like, dude, you knew better. You knew better. But I just felt like there was no other way out. And I drank. I put myself in a corner all by myself because I drove my family away. I mean, my friends, I just didn't speak to them. I just didn't talk to them. And I drove my family away and, that's all you got. And so it came to a place where I needed help. I needed serious, serious help. And so we found a place in Princeton, McKinney called The Meadows. And, I was terrified of going away because it was a 30-day stint. So obviously I'm not good with 30-day stints. I don't do good being away from anybody for 30-day stints. But that's the thing for myself is like I had already pushed everybody away. So what's an extra 30 days by yourself gonna do to hurt you? And so we went and I was completely freaked out. I was just like and the crazy thing about it is I surrounded myself with military guys. I surrounded myself with special operators that have been in the special forces and they even told me you've got to get help because I had been training with them. I love to train with them. I love to do CQB and pistol training and all kinds of different stuff. I love to shoot, and that's my therapy. And I just was pulling away from them too, and they all knew where I was headed because they had all been through a struggle. If it was, drugs, alcohol, anything, they'd walked there, so they knew what was going on, and they knew the whole story. Like, oh yeah, I'm fine. They're like, okay, they'd been there, done that. And so they were even telling me like, man, you gotta get some help. You gotta get some help. And so I did. I went, and let me tell you, it was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had. I met some of the most interesting people, some of the most, I mean, I call them family now. I've been to their weddings. I've seen their babies born. I mean, we're that close. We're that tight. It was just one of those experiences that was scary, but I had to do it. And it was great.
What is so remarkable to me is you had been through so much. And so obviously don't know, but I can see the strength in you. And so when you're displaying continually over and over and over the strength and this fight and this perseverance, and ultimately something like alcohol, partying could have been the thing that took you down after fighting for so long. But yet, because it's a sneaky little devil, I certainly know every which way as someone that's been in recovery for a while. But you, again, and I do solely believe this as someone, you ultimately, anyone around you can tell you need help, you need help. You have to make that decision and you have to fight.
Yeah.
And yet, here again, you stood up and fought for something that actually is pretty socially acceptable, which is ridiculous because it is so harmful, and said, no, this is not how my story is going to continue. And so where did you continue to find that strength and courage? I mean, it's like continuing to dig deeper and deeper within yourself.
Rehab for me was the reset. I was able to really just open everything up, let it all out. And I learned that I wasn't alone because I had forgotten all of that. I had forgotten about the whole, you've got family, you've got support, because I had completely burned it all down. And so I have a buddy, his name's Thomas, and his story alone is beautiful. But me and him just became like this. And we delved into God like crazy. And we just found our purpose again. We found light. We found our love. We found everything again. All the old dusty light bulbs in our head that had been dusted from all of our addiction and everything just clicked back on. And as you well know, recovery is an everyday thing. And so I came out of there great. My relationship with my family is now great. I've been out for 5 years now, and I have relapsed one time, but I've been clean since. You know, it was just the most absolute wonderful experience that I've ever had. And I have to give credit where credit's due. Is, I was never a big podcast person. I always listened to music. And the Sean Ryan show has really opened my eyes to a lot of different things because he's brought on these professionals, these special operators. DJ Shipley, his story speaks numbers to me, and Blake Cook and Kyle Morgan. Those are the three that stick out to me most because these guys did so much in their lives and they had so many demons floating around in their head that they knew they needed to get out. Like they saw everything burning around them and they got help. And so I learn continuously and I live off of those podcasts.
I had some connectivity issues to end the show, but you can certainly tell where Jackson's story is headed. It's one to survival, perseverance, and continuing on. We will catch up with him at a later date and find what he's up to now and hear more about his continuing journey of redemption, hope, and faith, and how he is now going on the road to share his message with his beautiful wife, Blakely, as they help others as others have helped them, be it through a medical diagnosis, addiction, faith, whatever struggle people are going through, they are here to help and walk this journey with them. One of the key ingredients that I talk about on the show is the power of community and the power of people. And Jackson alluded to how TikTok can be a problem and social media can be a problem, but it's also the way we connected and the way you can connect with others, that there are good people, there is hope, and there is power in community. When you find your people and you find your support, your cheerleaders, those that bring strength and kindness to you, you lean into them. So much of that is through social media, so don't give up on it. And also, so much can be learned and shared through podcast. I will say I as well learned so much about recovery through podcasts. Be sure and check out the show notes as I not only link Jackson's favorite, but some of mine that helped me, especially early in my recovery journey. Hearing other people's stories is so powerful as we walk along this life. You can get a lot from AI and from books, but when you hear of people's lived experiences, it brings so much more to life. When you hear of people's lived experiences, it brings all of the learning together so you know how it can apply to your life. You take what you need. We are unique individuals. No one's story is the same. Take what you need and leave the rest. I hope you got something out of today's episode. I know I did, and can't wait to hear more from Jackson as he continues to share his strength, hope, courage, and compassion with others. As always, thank you for joining Midlife Catalyst, a place where ordinary people share extraordinary stories of growth at any age or stage of life. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure and hit the like button and give us a follow and subscribe so you don't miss a moment of any future episode. You never know where I may be or what my face might say. If you enjoyed today's show, leave a comment so I know what resonated with you. Sure to share the episode with a friend who you think might benefit from today's story. I'm Amanda Yantz, and I am so grateful for you coming on this journey with me as I learn to fly. Remember, AI can do a lot, but it cannot write your life story. Be the CEO of your own life and write your own narrative. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you among the wildflowers.